3, 2, 1, showtime!
Hello, I am Cade, and welcome to Double Feature Movie Club, the weekly show where we discuss two typically indie movies that we hadn't seen before, but we watched right before this and going to discuss. This week, it's just the two of us. It's me and Diane. Diane, how are you doing?
I'm great, Cade. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I enjoyed our movies this week a lot, so... That's nice.
I did too. And the only thing was it didn't let me completely binge watch Grace and Frankie's new episodes.
I watched them all.
You did?
I did.
I watched like 4 of them.
I can't stop. When they drop, I have a very hard time just stopping. I just watch them all.
Yeah, they're only 30 minutes. So,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And sometimes shorter than that.
Yeah, and so many good jokes. So many.
It's fun. So Diane and I watched Grace and Frankie, and the last season dropped. The last part of the last season dropped this weekend. Just to clue the audience in. But it's just a fun show. You know, it's just I think I like the feeling or the vibe more than I like anything in particular about it. It's just that it's cozy and it's fun. I like Grace and Frankie, the actual characters, more than I like pretty much anybody else in the thing. I definitely watch for them more than any of the other side characters. But it's great. I do really love the show a lot. And it's
over the time, the girls have grown on me.
Mm-hmm.
The boys have grown on me. Those brothers, they're just that. Every character is so quirky and different, and seeing Martin Sheen in a role like this it's just icing on the cake.
Yes,
it really is. Anyway, so I'm looking forward to finishing watching that. I'll
tell you.
Go ahead.
It had one. So outside of Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda, I love that they'll bring in these guest stars for arcs or a single episode that are like these character actors that you haven't seen or that you have seen, but like in a long time, and they're almost always playing against type. They're kind of like no, you never really seen them be able to play that type of character, but they're perfect for it, and it's that's always fun is when they bring in I think the first season there was Craig T. Nelson, and then there was Sam Elliott, and then this bunch of Michael McKean is one of my favorite character actors. He's at the top of and they bring in all these people that are at if I was ever a famous director or be at the top of my list of actors to work with. I mean, I would love to work with Sam Elliott. Michael McKean is just a real niche actor that I love so much and love everything he is. And then I have another one that appeared in a single episode. I don't know if you're there in it. That I love him in everything, and he's this great comedic actor. And I was like, he needs to be on Grace and Frankie because he's appeared in so many sitcoms and movies. But Martin Mull appears. And,
oh my!
Yeah, and I love Martin Mull so much.
Yes.
And that was fun whenever he just appeared, and I was like, yes. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's been the fun of the whole series. I hate that this is the last season of it, just because it's like, getting a birthday present when they drop new episodes. So yeah, I hate that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear about it when it first came out. So I was visiting some friends of mine in Phoenix or Scottsdale, Arizona, And they said, "Have you seen this sitcom?" And I said, "No, I haven't heard anything about it." And they were like, "You've got to watch this." So we sat there and watched the whole first season one night during my visit there, and I fell in love with them. They're so, just the entire cast is so much fun.
Yes.
And yeah, the Jane Fonda and
Lily Tomlin.
Lily Tomlin are just so perfect in these roles. Just so perfect. And I love the wig that Jane Fonda had on her COVID wig, where the gray had grown out. Yes. I felt that way myself during the COVID, where oh gosh, the whole thing is gray. Wow. So yeah.
And Jane Fonda, she'll change her appearance between sort of seasons and do different things with her hair and everything. But Lily Tomlin, her character stays pretty consistent throughout.
She's
I love the different storylines. It's a great watch for anyone who hasn't seen it. It's so fun, and it's great to see these actors get to do. It's sitcom-y stuff, but it's not like it has a heart to it that I think is just undeniable. That's
true.
So many things don't have. But yeah. This is our 10th episode, Diane, of Double Feature Movie Club. Can you believe it?
We should toast, except we already drank everything.
Yeah.
I have water.
Yeah, I have water too.
To us.
To us. I can't believe it's gone 10 episodes and roughly without a hitch. Not too many technical errors. I assumed we'd have a lot more than what we did. So that's good. And there's it's been pretty smooth sailing as far as I think as it could be. And it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed doing this.
I almost hate to say, you should say you told me so.
Yeah.
Poor Cade. He tried to talk me into this for 6 months. At least. He bought the camera for my computer. So I have a desktop that I use for work, so it doesn't have, all the bells and whistles that you would have today. So, he laid out cash. Once he did that, I felt really obligated that I had to do this. But I'm glad that I did. I kind of, now that I've gone back and listened to it, I can understand why Jennifer said some of the most entertaining time she has is just listening to us talk about movies. Because it is a lot of fun.
Yes, and that's what I want here is people to just sort of watch it and whether they've seen the movies or they're looking for just recommendations, or if they've watched them and they want to just be along with the conversation, whatever way that you go about this. We've had people do it both ways. I hope that you have just a fun time here, and I love movies a lot, as people know, and from watching this, and I just hope that this sort of is a fun conversation that people can join a part in, or just listen to. I think I've had a really, really fun time with this.
Well, it was a good idea. I'm glad you talked me into it.
Yeah,
and bought me a camera.
I've got to work through, I guess that'd be 20 movies that had been on my list of movies that I've been wanting to see and hadn't got the chance to, and it's given me a reason to watch them. And even the ones that I didn't wholeheartedly love, I still enjoyed every one of them. Just in whether that was the experience of talking with two people about them, or just the movies themselves weren't even just all that bad. Even the ones that I didn't like,
they weren't all that bad.
Even the bad ones weren't all that bad.
Well, and I gained a better appreciation for the ones that I really didn't like after talking to you, because it was like, okay, I can see it from your perspective now, and I wasn't looking at it from that perspective before.
And then sometimes conversation makes you sort of realize different things about like kind of what you're saying is the I initially when I watched Mississippi Grind wasn't a good example of during it. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, or even kind of immediately sitting, but even sort of through discussing it and sort of thinking about it a little bit, it's like, oh, I kind of liked a lot of the choices, and I end up really kind of liking it more after our conversation than I did watching it. And that was an example of that. I agree.
I agree. That is a good example of the one like that.
Mm-hmm.
Bad Education for me was another one that was something like that. I enjoyed the movie,
Mm-hmm.
but I had a completely different. I don't want to say completely different, but my perspective on it was broadened after talking to you guys, about the movie and the characters and what they were doing.
Yeah.
And of the movies, it's been my favorite so far. That one and the one with set in New Zealand.
The Hunt for the Wilder People.
Yes, I love that movie, and it's one of those. It's grown on me after watching it quite a bit.
Yes.
In fact, I thought about watching it again just because I want to see the lady with the great movie references at the end. When she does the Rambo thing, I love that character.
Yeah, the police, the sergeant or whatever, detective or whatever she was. That was a great role. Bad Education is definitely, I think, the best movie we've seen. Just from like, I can't. It was the one that I watched, and I even said that during it. I have no notes. And I wouldn't change a thing about it. I wouldn't. Each scene lasted as long as it needed to. The pacing was great. It said everything it needed to say and explored every avenue as much as I wanted it to be explored. It was perfect in the sense of what the story it was telling. The difference being that like there's other movies that I like more than it, that maybe has a little bit more flaws, but ultimately the type of movie I like a little bit more, or the highs that it goes to is higher than that. But in particular, I guess I'll spoil a thing that we'll talk about later here. Blackcoat's Daughter, I think I liked more than Bad Education.
Really?
Yeah. Even though I wouldn't call it a flawless movie like I called A Bad Education, I really, 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 really enjoyed it, and I think I ultimately liked it more. It was definitely my cup of tea movie. It's one of the niches of things that I'm like, that's what I love about cinema. It's very reminiscent of The Shining in a lot of ways, and The Shining's one of my favorite films of all time. And anything that sort of does that, I am 100% on board with, despite it, like I said, not being as perfect as a movie. It's up my alley more.
Well, with Bad Education, I don't think I've ever seen Hugh Jackman play a role like that, or Allison Janney. I mean, and before or since then, and it was really out of their, I don't want to say comfort zone, but out of their, the space that
their
we put them
typecast
in,
role,
their typing that we expect them to play, and they were so very good in those, those roles, and I hope they do more of that, really out of the box, kind of out of type roles, because that was really good.
And I think what made Bad Education so great in a lot of respects too is I haven't heard a single person talk about that movie. I've heard people in different circles talk about Blackcoat's Daughter and almost every other movie that we've talked about. It's certainly even like in film circles and different things. That's just why it got on the list. I don't even know how Bad Education got on my list. I don't even remember anyone. I've never heard a single word about the movie from anybody. But it must have been on some list that I pulled from, and I was just like, sure, whatever. I'll put it on there. But I haven't heard anyone ever say anything about that, which is why it was so sort of shockingly great. I was just kind of like, oh wow, why is no one talking about this? And maybe I saw it on like one of those award shows as just like one of those movies that, because I think like they were nominated for an Emmy or something, or a Golden Globe, or one of them was, and then it was like, you hear that with all those like period piece movies or these things that are just like from these award shows that you're like, okay, yeah, I guess, Nicole Kidman did a thing, or whoever it was. They did a thing on HBO and it was whatever. And you never watched it. But but I guess in this case it was actually I feel like very warranted because boy were they both great in that.
Yeah, they really were. It was like a Big Lies, only in movie form. It's more people should watch that one, I think. Maybe it's because it was based on a true story. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes those kind of get underplayed.
Yeah. And I think that, maybe, I don't think that it would have made a better story at all fundamentally, because I think, like I said, that was flawless and perfect, but it maybe would have gotten more attention if it was like a limited series.
Mm-hmm. Well, true. Yeah.
In the modern era that we're currently in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and jump in here. I did want to mention that I noticed two connective pieces between our movies that we watched this we of course have the Roberts family and
yes,
and really nepotism in general,
really,
because the Ben is Back is directed by Lucas Hedges' father.
Yes, and written by
and written and directed by, which I didn't know that he was related to this guy who's a writer and director. He's done a lot. Like Peter Hedges is
he's well known.
He's well known, and I didn't know that. And then of course you have Blackcoat's daughter, Emma Roberts. First off, who's the niece of Julie Roberts, the daughter of Eric Roberts. So she's obviously connected within the family, and then it's directed. Do you know who it's directed by?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, directed. Oz Perkins. Yeah, which is Anthony Perkins' son. Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates. So yeah, interesting stuff. That that's a trending thing.
It is a trending thing, and also the character Cade in Blackcoat's Daughter is played by.
Oh, I don't know this.
You don't know this?
Okay. Oh, you mean Kate? Oh, Kat. Yeah, Kat is Catherine or what's her name? Oh boy, I have it written down. Yeah, I know her from other things.
Sing Street.
Oh, she's. Oh, okay. You mean isn't that Rose? Is who that is, right? Or
no, it was Kat.
Kat's the lady who she was Sabrina and everything. It's Rose. Rose is the Sing Street girl.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I had to look again. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, yeah, I didn't honestly didn't put that together until you said that, but though.
she plays like a 14-year-old in Blackcoat's Daughter, and she looks very young. It's a freshman in high school.
You mean Kat's playing? Kat's the younger one. Rose is playing the senior there.
Oh, you're right. You're right. But anyway, she did both these movies in the same year.
Oh,
Sing Street and Blackcoat's Daughter in the same year, which I thought was really interesting. I always think it's interesting when what decisions actors make and when things come out, and then how they appear in these characters, right? So yeah, I thought that was interesting.
That is very interesting.
And if we're going to talk about Blackcoat's Daughter, it has Lauren Holly in it, which is one of my favorite actresses. She's so underrated, and she has a very small role in this, but I just love her. Anyway,
yes. And we'll get into all this later. That was a theme that I was like, yeah, there's a lot of famous families and daughters and sons and
exactly.
Which and that's a thing that I know people talk about on TikTok and different things. That's these nepotism babies is what they call them, and that's a thing that like you get, and it does make you have a little bit of a step up, even if you are talented or whatever. There's several, of course, talented people that don't ever make it, but you do have a little bit of a leg up whenever your father or your aunt or whatever is a famous person.
Gonna open the door for you for sure.
Yeah, because it's about knowing people, and of course they know a lot of people and things.
It's just true in everything that you do. It's all in who you know.
Mm-hmm.
not in how good you are at anything. It's all in who you know.
Exactly.
I have a lot of those one-liners like that.
And it's not to discount them. I mean, I think Lucas Hedges is immensely talented. I wouldn't say that this movie was his best performance by any means, but he's other things I've seen him in is is insanely talented. Emma Roberts is insanely talented, and obviously the Osgood Perkins, I thought he did a phenomenal role directing that. But it talks about how there's probably these unknown talents that we'll never know.
Right.
That's the sad part. It's not necessarily that it's bad that it happens, but it's bad that these doors aren't open for other people and things. The other note I have that connects both of these movies, which is very, very specific, it's the setting. These are both winter and upstate New York movies.
Exactly. when I watched Blackcoat's Daughter first, and then I watched Ben is Back, and I thought with the opening scene, I thought, oh my God, here we go again.
Yeah. But it's oddly specific, not even just like the season, it's the fact that they both take place in upstate New York, and that was just okay. It was a random chance that we picked two movies that take place in winter in upstate New York.
In winter in upstate New York, that's true. That is so true.
So yeah.
Okay,
we're gonna jump in here, our feature presentation, and Diane is going to tell us the plot of Ben is Back, 2018. Here we go.
2018. Here we
Our
go.
feature presentation. There you go.
Thank you, Cade. So Ben is Back was written and directed by Peter Hedges, which I'm not sure if everybody knows who that is, but if you look him up on IMDb or Google, you'll find that he's got a lot of film credits. It stars his son,
Lucas Hedges.
Lucas. Thank you. I just lost his name right there. I'm having that kind of day today. Anyway, Lucas Hedges and Julia Roberts and others that I think you would recognize. It is a gut-wrenching story of addiction. And basically the plot of this movie is Ben, the son, who's 19 years old, leaves rehab and surprises his family on Christmas Eve. And he he lies to them. He did everything that you have ever heard about addiction, I think, is in this movie. And like I said, it is gut-wrenching to see what this family is put through. And each of them play I want to say, a typical role where you have everything from the one family member who blames, Ben for all the problems, the mom who is trying to bail him out. It's only 24 hours long. It's 24 hours in these people's lives. And it is absolutely eye-opening and gut-wrenching. I think I've said that like 6 times now, right? So I think that's gotten in there. So let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was opened up in northern New York State in the wintertime. And
it's Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in church. And I kind of loved it when she told them, this is the only time you go to church. So therefore you can deal with this. But I love the way she dealt with her younger kids on that one.
And so it's like it's a blended family, I think is what they call it. It's Julia Roberts has had 2 kids prior, which is Lucas Hedges. He's the oldest child of this family, and then he has I don't know how much younger his sister would be, 3
high school, so 3 years maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then she has then. They mention offhand a little bit about the father, and that's mentioned later on, his actual father. But she has since remarried Courtney B Vance, famous character actor, in a lot of things, and he's great in this. and had two children with him, who are these younger kids. I don't remember what their names are or but they're younger, and they're pretty about the same age, I would say.
Yeah,
right?
they look like kindergarten,
Yeah.
first grade, 5 or 6, that age in there.
And so he was gone for a few months, like they say, about, I don't know, 6 months.
Yeah, he said he was sober for 77 days.
Okay.
So it wasn't.
It wasn't a long time.
Yeah, but it wasn't his first time in rehab either.
Yes.
So that's the.
And I guess he could have fell off the wagon at some point while he was gone too, or something. They make it sound like there was a big blow up the previous Christmas, and then that sort of spurred him eventually going to rehab and everything, and so he's gone. He's been gone for several months. We'll say that he's been gone for several months, and he returns to the house on Christmas Eve while they were all gone. I guess they were practicing the Christmas pageant or whatever.
Yeah. their Christmas pageant they're supposed to be in.
And so they see him in the driveway, and then they reunite. And his sister, as you were saying, was one that knew that he would. It wasn't good news that he was back and everything. He's saying that his sponsor thought this would be good for him to come back to I don't know, to have Christmas or whatever, is what he's saying, and they make a deal that it's going to be just for 24 hours he gets to stay, because they all sort of know that it's triggering for him, and that it begins the cycle that will not end well for anybody. That is, it's a lot of.
The thing that kind of killed me is that they just took it at face value, that the sponsor said okay, and then he tells them this story about how he's gotten this ride with his family, and because there's a farter in the car, he has them let him out, so he hitchhikes the rest of the way. Okay. At this point, I'm thinking, how gullible are these people that they would fall for this stuff? But then, as the movie went on, I realized they knew he was lying.
Yeah.
And the mother wanted our Julia Roberts character wanted so much to have her son back.
Yeah.
That she just would gloss over everything. She would do anything to save her child. And it just that's the gut-wrenching part for me, was watching what her character went through, to try to help him. But he played her.
Because that's what she was saying. I mean, you're clued in later that there was apparently a conversation that they had where she called and he asked her what she wanted for Christmas, and she said that I just want you here or whatever. And that's perhaps what spurred this on, that and that he's an addict. He knew that, like, you're sort of clued in that he knew that he had drugs there in the house, that he had it upstairs, and that was perhaps a reason that he came, and that maybe there was some that he wanted to see his family as well, but she was, like you said, was willing to overlook a lot of, but she also it's complicated in the sense, like, she wants him better, of course. That's part of it, and that she's willing to live in a somewhat fantasy world where, like, to believe him in that, where, like you're saying, that he came here because of the sponsor, because that's what she wants. But at the same respect, she also knows that this, like, immediately her reaction is, when talking to the family, when talking to her husband, that they need to take him back. That this was, and they almost leave, and they almost do that. They're almost like, okay, this is bad, and take him back, and he's, it makes, everything makes logical sense, I think, from these characters' perspectives.
I think so too, and especially when the very first thing that she does is go through the entire house with a sack and puts all the drugs, everything valuable, everything together to hide. I guess, from him. And her daughter is like, this is normal. This is what you should be doing, because we've got this drug addict, and he's done this to us so many times. This is what we know we have to do.
Yeah.
And then when later in the movie when they're in the food court. First off, I can't believe that she let him talk him into going shopping, which was, but neither here nor there.
Yeah, they end
That's
up
one of those
like
plot things. I was like, yeah, I don't believe this. But anyway, in the food court, whenever she sits down with the doctor that prescribed her son at 14 opioids and kept, prescribing until he was addicted to them, and then and all of that occurring around the same time, I guess, that she gets divorced from her husband. And
yeah,
it's like all this just layered in. It starts layering in why this kid is in such deep trouble.
And there's a lot of finger pointing like that. That's about the movie. It's
yeah.
like, cause like you point at different things and it's from, even so a friend of his, a childhood friend also, he blames himself for getting her hooked on drugs, and she overdoses prior to this movie. And you have where he's dealing with is he continuing the cycle of violence or the cycle of that's happening, and is he to blame? And she says, no, you're not to blame. But even though he knows he is, and even that kind of runs contrary to some of her beliefs, that, and it's all from your own sort of perspective of whether or not you're at fault here. Well, look, there's the pharmacy scene where she goes to try to get that, whatever that's called. I don't know what it's called, but the thing that
the drug
that'll help if someone's overdosing. So this might not all make sense for people who are who haven't seen the movie, but the mother, I don't even know how to begin to explain it. The mother of the daughter who overdosed has this packet. Okay, I'll have to, I think, probably go through plot point by plot point a little bit of this. It's overall though.
Well, I think what they tried to do, what Peter Hedges did when he wrote this script, is he included everything you've ever heard about opioid addiction.
Yes.
And how people get hooked. The reaction, like from the pharmacy, readily gives him a syringe, but refuses to give her the antidote. The police officers carry all that because they don't want to promote
bad habits, is what they say, or something, or
risky behavior.
Yeah,
risky behavior. Yet they give him a syringe,
and yet they sold opiates.
Exactly.
And it's
exactly.
And
But
she
that's
makes
something-
that point. Yeah.
But that's brought out in the movie because that is true. I mean, that is, and I think this is what Peter Hedges has done with the entire thing. Every point that Ben goes through, or every section of this movie is everything you've ever heard about opioid addiction and what people go through. Even her cleaning out all of the medicine cabinets and hiding the valuables and all that stuff because she has her drug addict son back. Absolutely. It's like, okay, that's been checked off. We've done the pharmacy. Now let's check that off.
It's a message movie. And so he has a list of things that he's like, okay, I got to talk about this. I got to talk about, and sometimes it's heavy-handed with or not, I want to say heavy-handed. It's contrived. At worst, it's contrived. But with her having to run into the doctor at the mall that they go to, okay, that you have to suspend your disbelief at certain points. But at the same time, though, it keeps focused with it's a mother and a son story. That's it.
Right.
And so it doesn't ever lose that. It doesn't ever compromise those characters. So that's where some plot things might be kind of okay, but to make a point at times. But at the core of it, you don't ever lose that those characters seem real, and that situation the bigger situation seems real.
Yes.
That's where. And there's so many, what they say, what was it? I want to say that was Roger Ebert that said that. But there's, a good film or a great film is that you have 3 good scenes and no bad ones or whatever. this has so many great scenes and little moments that just make this movie. I think of after they go to the mall and after he goes to a meeting, I would assume an NA meeting, and they had that whole thing. But anyway, he goes to she wants to get him a new sweater because they're going to go to this church service, and that scene where he's trying on the sweater, and he makes that joke about like, and she like searches him because like she said that you're going to stay this 24 hours. There was rules that were set up. You're going to stay this 24 hours. It's going to be 24 hours only. You're never going to get out of my sight. I'm never going to leave you out of my sight. You can't go anywhere without me watching you. She was going to drug test him there. So at the beginning of the movie, she drug tested him, make sure he was clean, which he was. So that was, he had seemingly, at first I thought he was sort of lying about the whole thing, but he seemingly had been clean for that time. Like that seems to be the case. And, once you're addict, you're never not an addict. And, so they're at this department store trying on these sweaters, and he goes in there to the dressing room to try them on, and she like checks his pockets and everything and makes sure that he's doesn't have anything in his pockets. And so he shuts the door and he's like, "You didn't check my shoes." And then she freaks out and he's like, "That's not funny." And that scene is spectacular, and because she panics. And of course he does have drugs, and he got it. He lied about where he got it from. He got it from the house, as you later learn.
Well, the scene before that, while he was at the AA meeting, when the girl comes up to him and flirts with him, and then he obviously doesn't know who this girl is.
Yeah.
And then she explains to him that he was her dealer. And she just wants to get clean, but she just needs to get high one more time. And could he help her? That was just,
Which I think
which was a great setup to that scene in the changing room.
Yes,
in a sense,
it's a great setup to know, because prior to this, you didn't know that he dealt, and so that sort of sets up the sort of last act too. But that he. That it sets up a lot of things of like why he feels like he's part of the cycle, and that like and the finger pointing of all that is like, it's not as complicated as saying, it's not as simple as saying he's a victim in this, and it's not it's not as simple as saying that pointing at anybody and saying they're 100% to blame or they're 100% a victim. Like it's a muddy water, and that perhaps we all are to blame a little bit for this cycle. The fact that we don't talk about this stuff, and it's stigmatized, and the fact that just different things, like it really goes at all of the different angles of this, and says that, perhaps everybody's wrong. Julie Roberts isn't 100% right with her way that she handles that. And her husband certainly isn't either, and they're kind of...
I think they were two opposites. They were showing the two opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yes.
Where she was overindulging,
over-believing, over-sympathetic.
He was just the opposite, and
too rigid.
This is all on you. You've done this. Yeah.
Blaming the person,
And then the sister, I think she gives you that third perspective, in that she's disappointed in him because he's not living up to what he could be,
And she seems to be, I think, probably the most right of all of them. I mean, despite the fact that, she has certain flaws as well, and that it's sort of shown. But I get. You 100% get her perspective. You get everybody's perspective, but hers is something of like, she's just a kid in this situation, and it has dealt with this for a while. Yeah,
and she's the one who's tracking all their cell phones,
which
should have been an automatic thing. Which was kind of surprising to me that this kid had a cell phone at all.
Well, yeah, that he had that Lucas's character or Ben had a cell phone. Yeah, that he had a cell phone and it was still on the plan. Like that was one of the big plot holes of the movie. Was like, so he has a cell phone. It's still on the plan. And then not only that, like, so you're supposed to. It's one of those like I don't know technology things. And so she says, I have your guys' tracking of where your phones are because I set up the phones. And it's like okay. So she set it up. I mean, like you can somewhat make sense of it a little bit. I mean, like she's either like it's either a screenwriter that doesn't understand technology and how it's sort of these things are set up, which is a possibility, or if you want to read into it a bit, I guess maybe if this was real life characters, she set up the phone plan, or she set up the phones where she was like a I guess the parent of the phones where she could like monitor everybody's things and like so why would that character do that? And I guess it's maybe to keep track of her brother and but she doesn't seem like an overly she seems to be more of a hands-off person, like so it seemed a little bit odd for that character to be like wanting to know what these characters, what her brother and what her parents are doing. But maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's possible, I guess. It doesn't ruin the film in any means.
I think there's a lot of families where one of the kids is the technology person.
Yeah.
It's not the
and I guess if I had siblings, I maybe would set it up where if I had the ability to.
I know families that have set up. It's actually not a phone plan. It's actually an app.
Yeah, it's an app.
And you can put any phone numbers in that you want. And I know families that have done that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they can tell and I've asked the kids, how does it feel to know your parents know exactly where you're at all the time? Mm-hmm. And their answer was, we know where they are. Good point. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Message there. So yeah, but yeah, I guess she was a technology person in the family, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But you think that like that had been, she would have had to have used that before, right? Or if this is repeating of a thing. I mean, that's not important. It's not important breaking that apart. It doesn't ruin the film, and it's in other movies it would be fun to break up that logic of that.
The only way I could reason this thing out is he didn't have a phone on him until he got to the house, and they gave him a phone.
Okay.
And maybe I just missed the scene where they handed him a phone. That his old phone.
Yeah, or his old phone. Yeah, that could see that.
Which would be a big mistake because all of his drug contacts are in there. So why would you do that? So I don't know.
Yeah, it was one of those things where you're like, they had to. It was a screenwriting where they had to have him be able to be tracked for the last act to work.
Yeah.
So that was where true. You kind of you're kind of written in a little bit of, but at the same time, like she ends up just going and seeing the pawn shop anyway, right? The guy already told. So I didn't think at the end of the day it wasn't necessary, except for, I mean, you were scared when his phone was found in a dumpster. Yeah. Like that scene was like, oh, boy, you think that he's been killed or something, or is in there or something, and so that was, and then that also gave him a reason for the mother and daughter to speak, and which was right. I think important. So I mean, you could sort of break it up and understand why that was the case. So overall, what did you think about this movie?
I think, like you said, it's a message movie, and they got everything I've ever heard or read in anything associated with the opioid crisis that's going on. So I think they covered all the bases for that. I don't know if I like the ending of it that much, but at the same time, I don't want to give anything away from that. I don't think it takes away from the movie as much as it just, I don't know if it fit. It's like, okay, now what? Okay, this it's just a cycle. I think that this family is going to be going through forever. Yeah. Until it resolves itself. So,
it resets the cycle. Which without giving anything away, it which I think perhaps is the point that but you would think that I mean the sort of setup is that it's eventually going to end in an awful way, and so you didn't know if this movie was going to, but it's like I think it's and then what is sort of your question when you see this movie. But It's a heartbreaking movie. It's really it's sad and it's depressing, and it's still good. I mean, it's like, some people don't like watching sad movies, and it's like, yeah, no, I get it to a certain extent, but I like movies were meant to move you in ways, and whether that's positive or negative. I like movies that make you feel strongly, and I think this film did a really good job at that.
I'm going to be thinking about this film for a while.
I don't think it was, to be critical slightly of the movie, I don't think it was anyone's best performance. They were good, they were believable, and they were great in it. I guess I'll ask you, what do you think about Julia Roberts in general? Do you like Julia Roberts?
I do. I think that she's always been a little bit underrated, because she didn't come up through the ranks from the perspective that, through any of the major acting classes and all that other stuff. But I think instinctually she is a good actress because she does it from her heart.
Yes.
Not necessarily from what she's been trained to do. So when she's in a situation where she's portraying a person that it has to come from her heart, I think she does an excellent job. I thought she was great in this movie. I think, and of course, part of it may be coming from my perspective from my age, but I know a lot of mothers who would react exactly like she did. And you kind of hope they do. In a sense.
She reminded me a lot of my mom, and I think, she had a lot of that to her. That was when I left it. And I've seen families like that with step parents and things, and that rings true of how that is. And then even that relationship of where she's like, this is my kid, step back. And then the diner scene was really great of showing that sort of where she was like, she was on the phone with her husband and was like, okay, you worry about our kids, I'm worrying about mine. And then Luke jumps in and like thinks that this is an opportunity to talk bad about her husband, and she's like, no, this is not that either. And
you can see this is exactly how a mom would do it, right? I mean, this is she would say the right things. So I found her to be very believable in this role, because I do think it comes from her heart, and that's what the movie really is. It's more about her to me than it is about him.
And it's a different
perspective.
Yes, it is. It is more about her. I think there was a different way to do this movie where it was like slightly, I don't know how to say it, like there's a movie in which Julianne Moore plays this character, and it's a lot more, and I love Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore's top of my list of actresses and just actors in general. That it's a little bit more theatrical, like, I don't know, slightly more where it's believable, but it's kind of like, and it would make sense for the script, I feel like, to be that way. But all the actors play it with realism in mind. Yeah. And they play it with like I've seen Lucas Hedges play it a little bit more, and I hate to say that, it's not like it's like they're like unbelievable or whatever, but like Manchester by the Sea, Lucas Hedges, that performance is different. Everyone's playing it a little bit more theatrically. I love Manchester by the Sea. It's in my top 10 movies of 2010s. I tend to lean, that's the type of film I like a little bit more. Yeah. But I respect this movie and I really like this movie. But they're playing it a little bit straighter, a little bit less flashy, a little bit, yeah, I don't know how to say. So it's that.
Probably was more realism, I guess, is what you would be. Yeah. I didn't get the impression that it was like an after-school TV special.
Yeah.
That kind of realism, but from the perspective from her perspective anyway, she goes from, sheer terror to elation. I mean, in the course of this 24 hours. And I think that she plays it with a realism that you wouldn't necessarily see with other actresses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I think that's her gift. I mean, I think that's her strength, is that, regardless of what you might think of her other movies or anything else, is that is her strength. It's because she's not a trained actress. So what she's doing is off instinct and all based upon who she really is in a lot of ways.
Yes.
There was one line in this movie that I got to talk about because it was so great. When Ben says to her, "You're trying too hard," and she said, "It's what I do."
Yeah.
That was it. In a nutshell, that's the movie.
Yeah.
She's trying so hard to save this boy and to be there for him. But then you think this is what you want a mother to do.
Mm-hmm. And somehow it still goes wrong. You know, it's like she was about as good of a mother that this kid could have had. And yet it still goes wrong. And like, I think that's about what the film is, you know, it's like she could love him. She couldn't love him any more than she does, and couldn't care for him, and couldn't, you know, try as hard as what she does. And still something happened and different things. And she blames him not having a father figure. She blames the doctor that first prescribed him the stuff. And then the different people that was in, you sort of, but yet something still goes wrong. So structure-wise of this movie, delayed for a second act, which was, it has an odd structure. I don't know if you noticed that with anything, but it has a pretty lengthy first act, which is getting to know these characters, putting them in all that. The second act is really them looking for this dog. That's the second act, which is much later in the film than a traditional second act would be. That's really what the plot of this movie is. The bulk of this movie is them in a car and them going scene to scene trying to find the dog that was kidnapped, and puts you in a lot of what it does is you're then able to then go back to why he got hooked and see how he was led down this path. But it does it that's one that it does it very well, that it doesn't seem like we're going down memory lane, you know, but it could have been a much worse and handled a lot worse than what it was. But it was an excellent way of, he's trying to track down who could have stole this dog while they were at the Christmas pageant. And you get to see all these different people and it shows the different sides of like where he was maybe to blame different things because he made irrational decision making under the influence, and then also how,
and he's a teenager.
Yes, a lot of things there.
Do you think this movie would have been more acclaimed if it hadn't came out at the exact same time as Boy Interrupted?
Boy Erased.
Lucas had, was that it? Erased. Sorry,
yeah.
Interrupted. That's Girl
Interrupted.
Boy, with Nicole Kidman and Russell Crowe, and because that movie had a ton of nominations and awards and everything else, but it's almost the same movie in a sense.
Yeah, I think that it came out during a time, I think, because it's died down a bit, but like he was the teen kid or whatever, or the troubled kid, I guess you would say, in tons of movies for like a 5-year chunk, or maybe shorter than that, 3-year chunk. Like, I mean, with Manchester by the Sea, this Boy Erased. There's a few other ones that he appeared. He was in Lady Bird, wasn't he? Wasn't he in the? He was in Lady Bird. He was in. Oh, yeah. He's been in just a bunch of those things where he was. There's even some I'm just completely forgetting, but yeah, and I think that a lot of them just blurred together for a lot of people, and this probably should have been a bigger thing. I mean, Peter Hedges, now seeing his filmography, he just comes in every once in a while and like, here's my script. He did What's Eating Gilbert Grape. He did About a Boy, Dead in Real Life. Like these ones, when these things come that he writes, it's kind of like, okay, the world sort of is like, let's look at what he made here. And this was one that I think it maybe hindered a bit, like you said, the release next to a lot of these things. And I don't know. And Julie Roberts doesn't act, or in the modern era, doesn't act as much as she used to, and is very selective about her roles. Right. And so you would have thought that this movie would have gotten the attention, but
I think everything is timing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the timing of this one versus the other one. The other one's more salacious.
Yes.
You know, the whole idea for that movie is much more salacious than this one. And it's sad to say, but I don't think people really care about addictions like this.
Yeah, and I think that's almost the point of it too. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, when's the time to sort of talk about this crisis that's happening in America? I mean, Dope Sick talks about very similarly, and I think it's perhaps, like we mentioned earlier, it's the medium of that. Maybe we are moving much more with these message things to. It needs to be this limited series on a thing. So maybe a movie isn't the medium for that, which is sad.
Yeah.
These are good and they are good, but it's like it
and informative. I mean,
informative.
They're message movies, but they're also informative. I think if more people knew that your history teacher could be your drug dealer, you might change the way people look at all of this.
Another great scene.
What I mean?
That was one of those. I was hinting at that earlier.
Short, big, great scene. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you get so much about what's unsaid there, with that, like that, and that she's incredibly upset, but yet, she can't do anything about it then. But I imagine after this is said and done, she's going to have a word or two with that history teacher.
Yeah. Well, the all of the adults in this movie let this kid down.
Yeah. Yeah.
He never had a chance in that sense. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think it does a good job of portraying him as not necessarily a victim either.
Mm-hmm. So. And he's not himself. Like you sort of set up of like he's aware of these horrible things that he's done, but and he knows that monster's there and is a part of him, but it's not who he is in that moment. But it could be, And I don't know enough about. I guess it's a slight spoiler. I don't know enough about. So he's it's heroin, right? And then I don't know enough about. Is that's enough to overdose on? That little tiny package that he.
I had no idea what it was. Fentanyl, yeah.
But that's a.
I think if I remember correctly from things that I've seen and read, is that once you've gone through rehab and you've gotten off drugs, it doesn't take much to cause you to overdose.
Okay.
It's like the worst thing you can do is to shoot up after you've done that. So.
And he knows that too.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what he's dealing with, a lot of internal things, of a lot of blame, a lot of self-blame about this, and that he believes that that the best way to break the cycle would be to take him out of it, and that he has this deep impact on this family.
Sure.
And
it's like the only way I can save my family is to eliminate myself.
Mm-hmm. And
there's a spoiler.
Which I mean, that's said previously. He's openly talking about this. But okay, I don't think I really have any other notes. I really thought that the front door was going to be something. Was somehow going, because the boy that kept the alarm system that was like front door every time the front door opened. I was like, that's going to be something. They keep setting this up, but no, it never paid off in any way except for that. They
referenced that the reason they got the alarm system was because of him.
Yes, that was the only reason I guess that existed, but that seemed to be kind of a weak thing to have at the end. That I'm like, okay, so that's the reason for all that. And then Catherine Newton is the one who plays his sister, and she's in a bunch of stuff. And she's going to be Ant-Man's daughter in the new Ant-Man movie.
Really?
Yeah. And she
all
was
grown
in,
up.
yeah, and she was in, all grown up because it's now in the future in 5 years. And some people were upset about that because they recast, because it was a different girl in game when. So, but she's now a rising star because she was in, I don't know if you saw Freaky. That's a good movie if you ever saw that.
I don't.
It's Vince Vaughn. And her, and it was one of these scripts that people talked about, and it was originally titled Freaky Friday the 13th, which was, so the idea is this girl switches places with this axe murderer who's supposed to be kind of like a Jason character, which is Vince Vaughn in this movie. And Vince Vaughn has the body of this teenage girl in Vince Vaughn's body, and then she's running around trying to kill people. It's a real funny movie. Alan Ruck is in it. He plays this really I love Alan Ruck. He plays this teacher, the shop teacher in there that's incredibly rude at everything. But yeah, no, great movie. If you guys haven't ever seen that, a lot funner fare than this is. And I believe it's on HBO Max. That's how I saw it. I don't know if it's still on there.
Okay. I'm not. Yeah, I'm just looking at the poster. Yeah, I'm not gonna watch that one.
It's more comedy than it is horror.
Okay.
So what are you gonna? Yeah. What are you gonna give this movie, Diane?
Stars are back, right?
if you want stars,
I don't feel comfortable using drinks. There's something about it.
That's what I was like. What do I give this thing? I can't. I absolutely. There was things that were off.
You don't want to use the syringe.
Yeah,
right?
the syringe. Yes, that was the one that's like. Well, that can't do that one.
I would give this movie a 3.5 stars.
3.5 stars.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's very informative movie and it's sad in some ways, but in others, it's one of those that I've thought a lot about since I've watched it. Mm-hmm. Just because, there were things that maybe you have heard or saw in the news or whatever, but you've never seen it all put together like this in a way that personalizes it. And I think that's probably a good thing.
And I think it does
it's one of those movies that it would be a good to show in high school civics classes. Mm-hmm. Or whatever. Remember, there were, in our civics classes, we watched movies. So
I agree.
Whichever class they have movies in now, it wouldn't be a bad idea to show those.
And there's nothing, like it would be really good in schools because there's nothing I wouldn't say really, there's nothing crass about the movie at all. There's nothing like, so it deals with it in a very, I think a way that kids can understand too and everything. It's nothing.
And it doesn't glorify it in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
I mean, she makes that, they sort of talk about how when he recommended drugs to his friend or whatever, and like her excuse is that he never saw the downside of it at that point, and so like they sort of even talk about that a little bit too, like during the height of it, it doesn't seem, you don't see all the negatives, but then
wasn't it heartbreaking when the kid, he's in a couple of scenes, so he was on the elevator and then he goes to him to find out who knows that he's in town. And that kid later, really begs Julia Roberts' character to help him, just try to save him. And here he's just a kid. So,
and the fact that he calls her Mrs. B or whatever.
Yeah.
And like that rings so true too, for like how, and just like childhood friends' moms will always be that, and like he's sitting there and he's acting out like he punches him or whatever because of he's trying to get out of that situation or whatever, but he's still like a kid or whatever, and still like refers to her as like Mrs. B, has like this sort of respect for her or whatever, and
she even says, your mom and I were friends, I changed your diapers, and here you are, and it was heartbreaking.
The last thing she says is like, call your mom and tell her that you're alive, Yeah. That was, yeah. Now,
it was obvious he was living on the streets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway.
And then,
what would you rate this one overall?
Very similar with what you said. I gave it a broken heart. It's a heartbreaking movie. It's very, and it's very
heartbreaking.
And and it's one of those things. I know it doesn't sound like we're selling the movie if we're saying it's incredibly sad, but I would recommend watching it. I think it's an important watch. Sometimes you need your heart broken. Sometimes you to understand these people, to make it where it's not hypothetical. This movie makes it like very clearly this is what these people are and everything. And I completely understand an addict's mind. I know that if I ever went, it's so simple to go down that path. It's so many people pride themselves of like, well, I couldn't do it, or I don't have that. I'm like, no, I know I could, and it's completely understandable. And
it is, and I think when anybody says that, yeah, this would never happen to them, they're not being honest with themselves.
Yeah.
Because it absolutely could happen to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Well, okay. Sorry, very sad thing.
Ollie has seen something outside, or he is tracking.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's doing. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's good. We're gonna move on to our second one. I would say it's a much lighter fare, but it's not. It's in some respects it's darker, but in some, I mean, I would say it's campier. I don't know if I wouldn't call it campy. You would call it
this isn't happening to your neighbor.
Yes, this isn't happening to your neighbor. That's a good way of putting it. Or I sure hope not.
Yeah, let's pray it's not happening to your neighbor. Oh my Lord.
So next we're talking about the 2015, I have that written down here, 2015 horror movie, The Blackcoat's Daughter. After our short animation, or our short intermission, that's what I'm going to say, animation for intermission. Grab something from the concession stand and then meet us back here in 30 seconds.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time. All these delicious treats are waiting for you at the refreshment stand. Delicious fresh popcorn, ice-cold cola, and candy you know and love. They're all ready for you now, so you won't have to miss any of the feature. Come and get them.
And now, on with the show.
Okay, don't do this very often, but here I'm explaining the plot of a movie. Here we go. We'll see what I can do here. The Blackcoat's Daughter. This is our second feature of the night. It was directed in 2015 by Osgood Perkins, Oz Perkins as he's sometimes called. He is the son of Anthony Perkins, which you may know as the actor who played Norman Bates in Psycho. He did other things, but that's pretty much what everyone knows him as, is Norman Bates. But he's his son. And the music's also done by another one of Anthony Perkins' son, Elvis Perkins. I don't know if you knew that. He's a musician, and he did the score for his brother's film. It tells the story of three girls. There's Kat, short for Catherine. She's let's see how to explain this. I probably should have prepared this. I'm not used to being put on the spot here to do this thing.
It's hard, isn't it? I think we should stop this part.
I think it helps the audience to know a little bit what the plot is. So she is, they're at this girls' boarding school, and it is heading into a break. It's not winter break. It's in middle of February, so I guess they'd have a break in February there. And it's in upstate New York, and there's a day in which all the parents come up and see them. There's like a recital thing or whatever, and then they pick them up and they take them back home for a break. It's said it's a Catholic girls' school. It said they can't stay there during the break. They had to go home, but her parents doesn't pick her up, nor does the parents of this other girl named Rose, who is a senior. The other girl's Kat's a freshman. Rose is a senior. Rose, if you watch Sing Street, she's the girl from Sing Street. She's there as well, and she's sort of tasked with watching over her until her parents arrive, is the idea, to pick her up. And then the third girl's Joan, which we'll get into. Well, we won't worry about her storyline yet. Okay. Diane, I just moved this over here. What did you think about this movie?
Okay, I love the opening of this movie. It was almost in black and white, wasn't it? I mean, it was, and you're coming up on this Gothic Catholic girls' school, and it's like so
before
ominous.
that though. The movie opens with turquoise text on black background, which that was immediately first sign that I'm going to love this movie. So The Shining is a turquoise text, and then just any movie that does that. So like it's playing with it's hearkening quite a bit to The Shining, and to these sort of 70s. I mean, The Shining's 1980, but these sort of older horror films. It's a slower. This is a very, very to get you to understand. It's a slow burn horror movie. That's what this is. But yes, opening. It's beautiful. This movie's beautiful.
It is beautiful. I have to agree. I was like, please don't make me watch a horror movie, but I have to tell you that it is beautiful. I mean, as far as the cinematography and the lighting and all of it is just beautiful.
More movies need to look like this. I mean, even if it's not even horror. I mean, like I watched there's so many shots in this movie that's like so inventive and not even just like that. It's just breathtakingly beautiful. It
really, really was, and the lighting on their close-ups of their faces.
Mm-hmm.
Was just these girls were beautiful and innocent. You could just see, that this aspect of, who they really are. I mean, they're not going to stay this way, but
mm-hmm.
the reality is that they're nativity. What's the word?
How do you pronounce that?
Naivety.
Naivety.
Yes, it's like so part of the shot.
Naivety.
So.
Something like that.
Sorry, yeah. Anyway, their innocence. And
naivety. Naivety is how it's pronounced.
Naivety.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you.
It's going to bother me.
I know, it's going to bother me too. Anyway, the way he just does this, it's not the words or their actions necessarily, but he does it with, the way that he lights them and portrays them, physically. And it's just, I love that part of it. And I kept thinking, this is a horror movie. This is a horror movie. Okay.
It's an odd one.
I keep telling myself, I've got to remember, this is a horror movie. But the reality was, it wasn't. It was more of a psychological, like thriller in a sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't. It's a movie that like, it's really about these characters. It's incredibly slow burning, but like in a fascinating way, not like it's moving. It's moving to some sort of point. It's not like it's like one of these movies where you're like, it's just meandering and it's not interesting and it's not. It completely engages you of like, where is this going? And they set up some threads in different things, and you're like, because you don't know exactly which thing's gonna get pulled from, and there's some that's like, everything ends up sort of being part of it, but like some of them's not as important, and then some of it's I don't know. I find,
but you don't know which ones aren't.
Yes,
the character. I keep getting the characters mixed up, but
so Kat's the girl.
Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Rose. Has this boyfriend. I think she might be pregnant, and you think, oh, this is going to be part of the plot. This is going to be a big component of this, and no, not really. Other than it
informs the character. It
just informs her a little bit more. But you're right. It just had all these different threads to it.
Well, you didn't know what the force was going to be. You didn't know you knew this was a horror film going into it, and it certainly has a vibe of that. But even so, like I just want like a movie that has this vibe that isn't a horror movie. Like it has a cool tone to it that I just loved, and it disturbs you, but it's also just it's disturbing yet cozy. I don't know how else to sort of say about it. Like it's a brilliant place to set it. I've thought about horror movies set in because I've had to stay on campus during a break for work or for different things, and it's a scary sort of vibe of this place that of. It's this large place that with these corridors that are made up for people that to usually travel for lots of people. That's why The Shining worked very well. You're used to this. Yeah. It's this attraction that's used to having. It's made for a bunch of people, and for it to be closed and no one's traveling. The lights are mostly out. Everything's sort of shut down, and it creates this dissonance that's really, really powerful. Of like, because you even see the school when it's a bunch of people in it, and then when it goes away, and that it's just these hallways and these corridors of these and that no one's in, is it's haunting.
Isolating.
It's isolating,
Yeah.
and it's cold, so you can't be outside, so you had to be inside. And they make it seem like there's nothing around this place either. Like, you don't really see that she has this boyfriend or whatever from outside. But even so, like, she has to go back here to this place where she's the only one there. It's an excellent setting. The setting makes this movie.
There's stories even without even without the horror part of it, right? The entity and all that other stuff. The fact that the one girl has lost her parents, just that happening in this setting where she's all alone, that there's 4 people in the entire campus, and she can't get a hold of her parents, and finds out later that they've been killed in a car crash, probably on the way to her. That story alone would have been just a movie in itself.
Yes,
and that's just a subplot.
Yes, and you don't. What's interesting, you don't know who the bad person is. Like for a long time in the movie, you're really getting to know these characters, and you're like, okay, so what's the thing? What's the evil? What's the thing that's going to? What's the scary part? Yeah, you're just scared of the atmosphere, and so you don't know who or what's going to be the it plays with sort of tropes of like, you don't know which there's several different subgenres of horror, and so you don't really know at first what it's going to be. I assumed it was going to be some sort of supernatural. I knew nothing about this movie. I knew it was a horror movie. That's about it. I know,
and the title doesn't really inform you at all, does it?
And the title is nothing to do with it. I mean, I think we could probably talk about the title as like, so originally this movie was titled February. This movie was written, that was the script. That's what I think even premiered as, but A24 said, you could keep this movie, do whatever you want, but you got to change the title. They were like, we can't market that title. And so they sent him a bunch of things, because I read into it. I'm like, why was it called this? And so, but he was like talking about how they sent him a bunch of ideas, and eventually he landed on this because it was the song title at the end of the movie, in which and so that's what, and he's like, I guess, and he said it made somewhat sense of like, so the black coat could mean several different things. It could mean, clergyman. It could mean the devil. It could mean a few different sort of things, and it's sort of symbolizes it's about being these sort of father figures, or these oppressive father figures in life, or whatever.
That was the one theme that I kind of saw throughout the movie is, even Cat Rose, his father, is a prominent player. I had said earlier how much I love Lauren Holly, but her role is really, really tiny compared to Bill or James, Ramir? Yeah, his part, which he is the father, of Rose. Then you also have the priest, who's also the father figure, and he's doing that in multiple situations as part
and
of
the father's
plot.
almost like abandoned them, or like that they or some, because like the opening of the movie, like the clergy, she wants him there, and he's like, I have business on Albany.
Yeah.
And so like it's obvious that she's wanting some sort of father figure, some sort of person,
because she's had this dream that her parents were killed.
Yes.
Or and so she wants him to stay, and she wants him to be her father, I guess, figure, or he is one.
Yes.
To her already.
Wants him to see what she's worked on, because she's doing this performance of this song, and she just wants him to see. That ends up being a clever line of, I just want you to see my performance, and my and of course she does. So okay, okay. I don't want to spoil anything. We'll get into.
I know it's really easy to spoil in this.
So I will put up a
want to,
spoiler banner when we talk about this, but I want to just keep it for just right now. Would you recommend this movie to people? And then
Yes.
we'll get into spoilers.
And I don't like horror movies, but I would recommend this movie.
Yes.
Just because it's more, like I said, a psychological thriller. And the parts of it that I think are considered classical horror were really not, I think they were well done.
Mm-hmm.
From that perspective, I think it was really, really well done. And I think the stories of these girls are really intriguing,
Yes.
and important. And the fact that it's just so beautifully shot.
Yes.
And he really gives you that feeling of isolation. And I actually got a blanket.
Yes.
I had the air conditioner on and I had a blanket because it was
Watch
just,
this at night. I know people say that they can't watch this at horror at night or whatever, but I love it, and I loved watching that. I'm like, oh, this is. I just love the feeling of it. You're right. It's cold. Yeah. It's isolating. I just love movies that have such a clear tone, such a clear vibe, as I often say. It's just that is what I go for films for, and it's that in like performances. These performances are amazing, and specifically
really
the main girl, Kat, who some people might know from the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. She plays this Sabrina the Teenage Witch on the Netflix version of that show.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so that's what she was on Riverdale, and she's done that, playing that same character and everything. And she is. You definitely see this movie like that's a star right there, and like boy is she playing that just perfectly to a T, that character, and playing the broad emotions of that character. It's. And you can't help not. She has this screen presence that's just like you can't help just not look at her. She's striking.
That and she has to play her role without using words for the most part. She didn't have that many lines in this movie when you really think about it.
Yeah, no, you're right.
She's doing this all just through expression and the way he has her lit and everything else about it. It's just like. It's an amazing performance from that perspective. She has fewer lines than the other two characters.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned Emma Roberts yet, which she that was, I guess, shocked by how little she's in this movie. She ends up being in the movie. Okay. So, but she does eventually come into the movie. Okay, I'll before we throw up our spoiler alert thing. Heavily recommend watching this movie. Heavily recommend watching this movie without any spoilers. I think you could still enjoy it with the spoilers, but I loved going in it completely blind.
Me too. I didn't read anything about it ahead of time. I just wanted to see it. To see, and it's the second act when you really
there's twists
where the twists become apparent.
And there's developments and things that are just it's well worth experiencing that untampered whatever with anything. And so yes, I highly recommend it a lot, and it's on Showtime. But if you want to, but we're gonna go in.
You can rent it on Prime.
Prime. We're gonna throw up our spoiler. Oh boy, getting a phone call. I didn't silence my phone before now. I'm noticing now.
I did mine.
Was that something else that was chirp, or did you have messages coming in, or was that something?
I'd gotten a couple of texts, but but it was quiet.
Okay.
I didn't know.
Sorry. So we're going to jump into spoilers because I do want to discuss a lot of this thing. I think it's important to discuss this. Okay. So spoiler alert. We'll take this down whenever we're done talking about spoilers for this movie, but yes, I got to talk about this. Okay. So to clue people in, so Emma Roberts comes into this movie pretty a little bit into it. I would say, I don't know. It was a bit into it, and so this movie is broken up. And I guess I could have said this in the non-spoiler point, but I kind of liked even learning this, that there was there's 3 sections to this movie. It's told from me. I wouldn't say like it's interwoven throughout, so it's not like 100% from each person's perspective, but it does focus in on one of the girls each section, and it's they're sort of the primary for each time. So you have, I think so. Rose is first. That's the senior who's tasked to take care of this, and then the second's Kat. No, the second's Joan. Second's Joan. Joan is Emma Roberts' character, and then the third's Kat. Okay, so Emma Roberts is introduced. She's the biggest person. I mean, the biggest star, I guess you would say, in this movie of the time. But she's introduced. She's trying. You realize that she's escaped from some sort of mental institution. I think because she has the bracelet on and everything, or maybe a hospital or something, some sort of thing where she had to.
She's escaped from somewhere,
and she had a wristband on, and so she's on her way trying to travel to. I think pretty soon you realize it's the college, right? I mean, it's pretty clear that that's where she's trying to get back to the college. And so that's happening at the same time in the movie as as this other storyline is happening with the girls staying there over the break. And so it's revealed that, I guess, since this is spoilers, that they have a conversation. She's picked up by this couple who's also traveling to the same place, and this older couple, and they help her. At first, you don't know exactly what that man's motives are, and it's still kind of,
I know that. Yeah, that was kind of creepy because it was really him. His wife had very little to do with picking her up and taking her with them. It was all him. He was like, I'm just trying to help. And it could be that he's trying to make up for the fact that who his daughter was and what happened to her.
Yeah.
But they're making their annual pilgrimage to where their daughter was killed.
So it's revealed that they're the parents of Rose in a great surprise thing. That they're there to visit, to do this pilgrimage to the site where she was murdered. And Rose, as of yet in the movie, has not been murdered. It's very much alive. So you're set up, and you know that's the case. So you learn that, so this must take place significantly in the future or whatever.
Didn't you love it where Emma Roberts is sitting in the back seat and they talk about the fact that this couple is talking about they make this trip every year because their daughter was killed at this school and her name was Rose, and Emma Roberts is almost gleeful in her expression. She didn't know who they were, but after she found out, she was just elated.
Whenever she's getting that in the diner or whatever, the photo or whatever, or later on.
Or the back seat of the car, whenever they tell her. Whenever they really explain to her what's going on. And she is like, she doesn't say a word, but the expression on her face is like, she was just elated that these were the
chance
people.
of that, yeah. Well, she was, later on you realize, okay, so we're going to have to spoil the whole thing. So yeah, so it's Kat has made a pact with Satan. I'll sort of say that she's made some sort of deal with some demon entity, and it's done a lot more tactfully than I explained it just then. But yeah, she's at this furnace, and it's set up that in one. That's a very creepy shot. If she wanders on her below at this furnace, also very shining as the furnace. That she's doing some sort of ritual of some sort. I don't know. I mean, it's not really fun walking through all the plot points of this. So I'll just watch the movie, but we're going to talk about it in broad respects. That the theme of her wanting, just wanting somebody to care, and the cat, like that's what the point of the film is that she lost her parents. She didn't have anybody. She was, you could tell, like, she poured into doing this musical performance thing, and no one really cared about that. And, like, everyone was just like, okay, whatever, they're moving on. They all leave, and she doesn't have anybody there for her. And she had the priest wanting his sort of her to see this thing that she worked on, or just to notice her, and then she's like, no, I'm doing my own thing, and sort of leaves and doesn't even get to see that. And then she's then tasked, this other girl's tasked to watch over her and to be this person who just is there for her, seemingly just for her parents to eventually arrive, but for her, then she abandons her as well. And you can tell that hit her really hard. And she even says that, like, you were just supposed to sort of be there for me, or, you were, whatever that clergyman's name was, told you to be here and told you to watch over me and everything. And that's all she wanted. And so that makes her pray for this demon source she wanted, he at least gave her whatever was there for her.
Alone.
She wasn't alone.
She wasn't alone. Yeah.
And then when she's committed, that's the heartbreaking thing, is that it's heartbreaking. It's a demon leaving her, and then she's committing this horrible crime. But
they do an exorcism.
And
she begs him not to leave, but he does. And then she's in this mental hospital for 8 years, I guess.
Yeah.
This was
9
8 years later.
Something, yeah.
8 or 9, yeah. And so this is her chance to break out, to go back to the demon, because then she won't be alone, because she's still alone. She's This is the driver for her.
Yes.
That she is alone. And so and meeting up with that couple is like nirvana to her. She's like, oh, cool. Because I think she knows the demon's going to ask her to do some murdering again. Well,
she's almost doing it as a sacrifice. She's doing it at that point. So she kills the couple. We're in spoiler alert territory. So previously to this, she killed Rose, and she killed the two nuns, or I don't know enough about it. Is it there were nuns at the school?
Yeah, they were the nuns at the school that lived there.
Yeah, and so she ends up killing. She kills those for the demon to do his bidding, as seemingly because he's in her head and told her to do this. But killing the two parents, she did that for him to try to be like he's not there. She's gone by that point. She's doing this on her own volition to as an offering to get him back and everything. And so she breaks back into the school where she met him at the furnace or whatever, and the furnace is cold. He's not there. She did this for nothing, and then she breaks down. Like, that's the first time you sort of see her break down. She is not he's not there. Like, this was all like she's alone. Last frame of the movie, she looks off to the right. I don't know what your feelings about that. Does she see him? It's left open because she cried. Really, she cries, and she realizes how alone she is, and that she did this act like there's no one there. No one's there for her, and that's the beat of the movie. And then she looks up, like she often throughout the movie would look off screen to something, is looking over, like it recontextualizes the opening where she's talking to the clergy, and she's like looking over to the side the entire time. And then even that shot, the first shot of her where she's sitting in that chair and there's an empty chair next to her, is like, really, is because she's with this person. She's in like that's sort of the idea. It's like,
I took those shots as he's talking to her, and she's listening. By looking away, she's listening to him.
Yeah.
Because she was susceptible, and he was able to enter into, her psyche because she was susceptible, because she was alone.
Yeah.
Even before her parents, I have a feeling she was already, I don't know if the right word is possessed, interested maybe, before finding out her parents died, because it was the demon that showed her that her parents had died.
Yeah.
In the dream, she turns to him and says, "Father, where's Mother?" And it shows the car wreck. So I don't know that. The thing that was amazing to me is that she was able to communicate all that with very few lines.
Yes. And
Just
then like that opening of like where you don't know what's quite happening, and you sort of then are able to pick, like you get. So I think we danced around that. Emma Roberts is this girl. Joan is Kat from the future and everything, which we said, and so like it makes sense of like she's having these different flashbacks that then we are able to see from her perspective with the cop and with these different the different shots. That's like it makes it very clear. I've heard some people say that they read it as they're two separate people. I don't think there's any way of reading that. No. It's very clear that they are the same person.
She is, Joan is the name of the lady that she stole her identity. Whenever she killed her, when she broke out of the mental institution, she killed the real Joan and stole her identity. And then whenever she's at the bus stop, she's going to catch a bus, I guess, to go back to the school to get back to the demon. That's when she runs into Rose's father.
Yeah.
And he's,
just chance.
Like in a creepy way. Wants to take care of her.
Well, I'll tell you that rings true of that, because it's exactly, this is from personal sort of thing. The Laura, I made the documentary Laura, and I, that was one of the strongest things I remember was Ima lost her daughter, and sort of how they both interacted from that, the father and the mother, and that is exactly sort of what their perspectives were, where she cut herself off and like was very distant with people, and he seemingly like had that weird interaction with a younger woman, thinking that like to sort of somehow fill some sort of void that his daughter, which is I found to be odd, but it's the exact same thing that seemingly happened here, that he has this sort of odd interaction with this young girl out of
maybe I couldn't save my own daughter, but maybe I can save you.
Yeah. Maybe that's it or something.
That's how I read that. It wasn't as much as it was creepy because
you didn't know his
you didn't know, and but then once you find out, then you're like, okay, well, this is part of his persona now. Especially after the wife says, "I bet you didn't tell her this, or you told her this, or whatever," because she's used to him trying to save young women. Yeah, because he's done this before.
Yes,
taking it.
And she's, it was her seemingly her only child. We don't know that for sure, certain, but that like rightfully, I feel like pessimistic of that. I do find it odd that they wouldn't have known what the person who killed their daughter looked like, right? Or did they? Yeah. That was.
I would think so. You would want to like keep track of this person. That I don't know.
That was.
Seemed to,
that was the only part that I was like, I'm like, well, it can't be her because they would know. That was the one part that I was like, you had to suspend your disbelief a little bit for, and but no, and I think even how we describe this movie makes it seem a lot more campier and demons and possessions, but it's played completely straight and played completely haunting and gothic and
there was only a couple of scenes where that the demon's there. Really, I mean, it's not. I don't think it. The reason it's not campy is because it's not like 10 minutes of an exorcism, like in The Exorcist. This is like a really short little scene, and
you see him. He's like out of focus, or it's a shadow, or that's sort of how it. And it's told from the perspectives of these of of the girl who had this going on, and you completely understand that her perspective, despite the fact that she of course does some horrific things. She decapitates 5 people.
Well, I was just thinking when you said that about that, wouldn't they have known that was the girl that killed her daughter? And I thought, they might not have seen her in 9 years because she would have been a minor when it happened.
Yeah.
So it's very possible.
And that could have been more protective since she was a minor of her identity, or even like, what, publicly available stuff there was, it's possible.
So they may not have known, that was her. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, I recommend this movie. And I'm not a horror movie fan at all. But from a horror movie perspective, this was a really good one.
Yes, I loved it. I loved it. There was just so many moments that is like just kept hitting these boxes of turquoise on black text, check. There was just the opening shots of how these looked, and everything was framed, and like you said, the lighting of this stuff. Later on in the movie, the one that I was like, oh my God, was when she's in the car and they're outside the diner, and it's the mother. It was the time when Emma Roberts and her were talking, and it was like this. It was like rain, and it was like it was like a light from the outside, and it was like dew drops, and it was just beautiful, and it wasn't like it was highly stylized either. Like no. it was I mean, it was just it seemed so natural in their environment, and yet it was just beautiful. And it made me leaving like, I don't exactly know, and here I am a filmmaker and stuff, I don't exactly know how they accomplished this, but it I think that so many movies need to look like this. It just looked strikingly beautiful. And
Lauren Holly's profile is beautiful anyway. I mean, I love Lauren Holly. But anyway, her profile is beautiful anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that you're never seeing her full face, you're seeing her from the side. Mm-hmm. But you can hear the grief in her voice.
Yes.
And the disappointment in him.
Yes.
Which is not unusual for people who have lost a child.
Yes. In that, that's very, and because she is, and she, then them going when she was like wanting them to stop the car, and she's like, no, just get through, and then like the fact that he keeps taking her side over her is, you get like the female perspectives of this. You understand all their perspectives. They do such a great job with those characters of like, they make you sympathetic for all of their stories. It's particularly the 3, but in like before you even know, like they sort of walk you through the actions of what they do, and it's horrific and whatever, and in some respects with the main characters, but you still completely sympathize with them. You understand why they're in this and why they even are doing this sort of thing. It's really well written, well directed. It's like I said, it's not I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie like I mentioned earlier with how perfect Bad Education is, but the heights that it gets to in this movie is remarkable, and it's right at my alley. And I understand it's not probably everybody's thing. It's a slower movie, but it kept my interest throughout it. It's a movie that the tone, it's the perfect nexus point of all the things that I love. It's the tone is amazing. It's such a clear, beautiful tone with the vibes and everything. It's got such a clear performances. I watch movies for performances, and these performances are so clear and amazing. There were some themes. That's the other one. If those 3 are working in tandem for me, that's what I do. I don't make horror movies. I might sometime in the future. I haven't ever had a concept that I really liked for horror.
I think you should stick with true crime.
But those 3 nexuses are what I try to make with my movies and what I love in movies: tone, themes, performances. And if you have both of those working on all cylinders, you have an amazing movie for me. And this is that movie. This movie is all 3 of those working on all cylinders, and can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, I recommend it too. So what kind of How are you going to rate it?
You want me to rate it first? I'll rate it first.
Yeah, I do want you. I want to see what you're going to use.
I give it 5 decapitated heads.
Oh my gosh!
5 heads.
They look like baby heads too.
Yeah, well, they're both. I tried to just a generic because I was thinking I could do 4 of the women and then in one man, but I just decided to just do basic, expressionless, hairless heads. 5 heads. Yeah. Give this movie 5 heads.
You're gonna give it 5 heads.
What are you gonna give it?
I'm gonna give it 3 bourbons because you're gonna need a drink after this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. 3, you said?
Neat. Yes.
So like that.
Yeah.
There you go. I really, really, really like this movie. I guess we'll drop off. You have anything to say about spoilers before we're done? Any spoiler you want to drop before I drop this off?
Take that out.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're getting close to time.
Yes, getting close to time. That was, we love this movie.
Yes,
we both
enjoyed it.
Both enjoyed it a lot.
I'm not a filmmaker and I don't like horror movies, but I enjoyed this movie. So yeah, there's the layman term there. There's a layman take on it.
Exactly. Okay, and once again, we're working our way through A24's catalog. This was an A24 movie.
They buy a lot of movies and distribute them.
Okay. Next, we'll be going to preview time, in which we will decide our movies for next week. Preview time.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
Okay, let's take a look at what's coming our way. Okay, Diane, 1 through 20.
I'm a little afraid because I'm worried that we're going to end up with 2 horror movies again.
It's well, I've said it before. We have narrowly avoided so many of these horror movies. It's unreal. Okay. So it's bound to happen that we have a double again, like our second. But that only happened one time thus far.
Okay, I'm going to go with number 10.
Number 10. Let me pull this up here. Okay. Not a horror movie. This is Chronicle. Chronicle. A lot of people really have talked highly about Chronicle. Never saw Chronicle. A lot of people I know saw and loved Chronicle. It was a grounded superhero movie. The idea was that it was Josh Trank. It was it's a movie that made Max Landis huge. But never saw it. But a lot of people had, and it's like I might be wrong here, but I thought it was supposed to be like a found footage movie as well.
2012?
I believe so, yep.
Sci-fi thriller.
Sci-fi thriller. That makes sense. They'd call it
yeah.
that. So it's about a young people, I think, discovering they have powers. I don't know, something. It's a...
it has Michael B. Jordan in it.
Yes. It does.
Wow. Michael Kelly, who can always play a really good bad guy.
And I have it on here that it's on Tubi, but I'm not certain about that. Let me look that up real quick before I say that out loud like I just did. Oh, it's on Amazon Prime. It's free on Amazon Prime. That's where it's at. Which means it also, I guess, could be on Tubi. I don't know. Oh, boy. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Okay, yeah. I believe it's on Amazon Prime for free. I've heard a lot of good things about it. That might be a good one. Yes, it's on Prime for free. Might be a good one to watch beforehand if you are interested in watching beforehand and watching along with us. It might be a good one. And then, okay, mine, since I have the list, it's a little bit awkward for me to, pick. I could pick one off the list that I see, but I'm not going to. I'm going to, I have my Google Assistant over here that will give me a number between 1 and 20. So here we go. Hey, Google, roll a 20-sided die.
You got 15.
15. Did you hear it? Oh,
Yes, I did.
Okay, cool. Got 15. Okay. Okay. I this might be a horror. I don't know. I know very little about it. Let me look it up and see what it is exactly. 2017. It is horror, but it's a comedy horror.
Okay.
And it's called Mom and Dad. And it stars Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair.
Oh, I love Nicolas Cage.
It's so it's a comedy horror movie where Mom and Dad, Selma Blair's mom, and then Nicolas Cage's dad, and it says a teenage girl and her little brother try to survive a wild 24 hours, during which a mass hysteria of unknown origins causes parents to turn violent on their own children.
Oh gosh.
So there you go. Can you imagine trying to outlive a crazy Nicolas Cage? Who's your father?
Yeah, I'm not even sure that's a doable thing. Nicolas Cage. Okay, and that's on Amazon too, right?
Yeah, you should be able to buy it on Amazon. I don't know what it's streaming on. It might not. I mean, so it's Stars, which I don't have Stars, so I will be buying it this week on Prime or Apple or wherever you buy your things. I don't want to say one way or the other on YouTube or any of those things. So, yeah, that should be fun. So it's Chronicle and Mom and Dad. That's fun. I love me some Nicolas Cage. So this should be fun. Yeah, that's good. I'm excited about that.
Yep, I like Nicolas Cage. No matter how bad the movie is,
Oh,
you still
yeah.
got Nicolas Cage.
You can't go. You can't be an awful movie with if you got Nicolas Cage in it. He makes it.
You still got Nicolas.
He makes it enjoyable.
That's right.
But probably I should say not. I mean, bad as in non. It's not going to be devoid of entertainment if Nicolas Cage is in it.
True. That is so true. That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm looking forward to these, even though I'm not a big horror fan. I always like it when the kids, are trying to survive something.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Surviving mom and dad's one thing, but
yes.
Okay.
So that should be fun. Both of those should be fun. I mean, I think Chronicles maybe a little bit more. I mean, it's serious, but whatever. I don't know. So it should be fun. Anything else you want to say here at the end, Diane?
just that NEO Miami is doing their I think next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon, they're doing their presentation of Gilligan's Island, the musical. My niece is playing Mary Ann. I'm very proud of her, and can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. Do you have any podcasts coming out this week?
I do. This Wednesday is one of our every other Wednesday. So the third episode of Cade and Friends comes out this Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. It's on podcasting platforms, Cade and Friends, or you can watch it on YouTube, youtube.com/Cade Thomas, which is where this is also at if you're watching the YouTube stream. It is has video this time, so won't be only audio, but makes complete sense for only audio listeners as well. But it's Alex and I, and this is a really interesting one. It's us during the pandemic. It was November 2020 is when it's recorded.
Ah, yeah.
So our first two were recorded right before pandemic. It was in February and early March, and so this one was we recorded November of 2020, and it's interesting because it's almost like a time capsule piece of like what that was like, and we kind of talk about what that experience was like, and it's very interesting. It's if you know the structure of the first two, we completely do away with it for these next 2 episodes, where we're just sort of talking and talking about our lives and talking about what, the world, and we do have some sort of little bits, but like it's much more just a straightforward conversation. The third one and the fourth one, which will be coming out later in May. So it's interesting. It's not the it's not the clear cut if you watch the first 2 episodes and even what it evolves into. I don't want to downplay and say it's not, fantastic, but it's not what the podcast sort of evolves into, but it's still very, I found it, I was just going to watch a little bit of it in preparation. And then I was like, oh no, this is, it was fascinating to see. It was a different world already than what we currently live in.
Well, yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to hear Alex's take. Working at Walt Disney World and having the pandemic hit, and what that had to be like for him and so many people who work in that industry.
Yes, and it was fascinating because this was in between. So he worked at Cedar Point, and so it was after the summer that he did that, and it was kind of a weird season, obviously for that. Mm-hmm. And then this was before he went off and worked at a ski lodge. So we sort of talk about, clue people in on that of what that was like and what he's going into with his new, because I mean I stayed at the same place, but Alex kind of went around and did different things, and so it was interesting to catch up and see where we were at that point in our lives. It was different. Because
I think talking to a lot of my peers and my friends, we were just grateful we were retired. That we didn't have to go out and face the world. And then but even then, in the jobs that so many of us had, we did them from home anyway, or whatever, And
that's what I was talking about. Like, I mean, we just transitioned to working from home, which
is in and of itself is a real transition. I mean, having done it myself, it's not as easy as people think it is. Number one, and number two, it's not like you get time off.
Yeah,
I think that it's a perspective that not many people, unless you've done it, know what it's really like. It always sounds good, but there's always a downside to everything, and there's a real downside to working from home.
And I liked it more during it, but like now that it's gone back normal, I've gone back to the office and everything. So I'm like, in the few times I've had to work from home, it's been actually kind of not great. I mean, like it's a difference between like everyone being forced to do it, not a problem, but me by myself doing it is like it's a hassle, and and I don't even like I don't miss it. Let's just say that, which I thought I would.
It requires a completely different mindset of working. Anyway, that said, I have would be interested to hear what it was like for Alex, who works in a public arena where, in industries that were decimated by, the pandemic, and what that had to be like for him. Because, it's not like he has an established career. It's like he's starting out.
Yes.
And so it's even worse. You're like thrown to the woods immediately.
Yes. And we talk about all that at length. So no, I have no fear.
I can't wait to listen to it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to listen to that, because I'd be interested to hear that perspective.
Mm-hmm. It's it's fascinating, and in some of it, I mean, a lot of it wasn't there. I was lucky enough to have that position where I could do that, and it didn't interrupt the flow only as much as it interrupted the flow of everybody. But people
working from home is so different than what people think it is. Unless you've done it, you don't really realize what it does to your psyche.
Yeah. But it derailed a lot of people's my generation's whole plans and different things. And like, I was lucky enough to have that, but a lot of people lost their jobs, or like even like they were just the people who were a year younger than me. They were trying to enter the workforce for the first time during that time, and I just can't even imagine the headache that was.
I can't either. I can't even imagine what that would be like. Although, the 20 years that I spent that I worked from home primarily, even though I traveled a lot, I did a lot of interviews over the phone. We didn't even have Zoom, so I, hired people that, right out of college that I never met.
Yeah.
So, but it does require kind of a different perspective. And it's a lot easier when you have everybody doing it instead of just some of you, right?
Exactly.
That's part of it. But yeah, I'll be interested to see what Alex says about it. And then you too, because it is a different perspective.
Yeah.
And and the thing that I think I've read about that I really kind of was the positive side, where a lot of people said, you know what, I'm not going to do this job that I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go do something I want to do. So we have a lot, especially, I don't know if you know this or not, but Tulsa's like the small business capital of the world. I mean, of the States, because it's always been kind of a small business, generator to, the people here, the way that they think, they like the small business atmosphere. So there were a ton of small businesses that were created, although there were so many that were lost. It was like, well, out of the ashes, here comes the phoenix back. And you can see it. You and I go downtown every week. Yeah. And you can see it. I mean, you can see it coming back.
And not only that, but like the idea that there's some negatives to it too, but the idea that there has to be a virtual space for things, and that like everything that it forced a lot of companies to evolve their thinking of, and so that they had to be available virtually. That helped them, of course, with my role where I do social media stuff, that like so many people you reach a lot more audience thinking that way. And then even like what you're saying with small businesses, it made a lot of them think that maybe we don't even need a physical storefront, that some of this stuff can be done virtually and or like, I can sell this out of my home or whatever their things are. It created a lot of people time to do art and to do different things. It made everyone's priority realize that, to think internally a little bit about where they prioritize things and what they hold dear and what do they want. It made a hard pause to everything where you were able to sort of reflect and be like, okay, I like this, this, and this, and if things go back to normal, I want to do more of that. Whereas right before that, things were getting so insane and crazy of like, you were just running through, I got to finish this, I got to get this done, and not even thinking about the grander scale of things. And I'm talking about myself a little bit too, but it allowed me to sort of be like, okay, now I get to think a little bit because everything's paused. The world is paused, and so it's not, you can take a pause, but then you feel like the world's just moving without you. But in this case, in the pandemic, the whole world was reflecting. Yeah. And so you had the moment to do that.
Yeah, I think from a society, I think it makes us, a better culture and a better society for it to be able to sit back and go, okay, what's really and truly important? Yeah. And it's not working 70 or 80 hours a week. Probably not. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that one.
Yeah.
And I will like and share it and subscribe.
Oh, perfect. And in the thing, I was so surprised. I mentioned Double Feature Movie Club in the thing, so it cross promotes it. But yeah, because that just to think about, like, oh yeah, because I'm like, oh, I sure hope this is launched by this point whenever this eventually gets released. And I mentioned Double Feature Movie Club, which just think, but that was November of 2020 that I already had the name, already had all that.
Oh my gosh, was that when you were starting to try to talk me into it?
Yeah, that was when it was supposed to be a little bit more of a virtual thing that we could all hang out during the pandemic and everything. But I've had this idea back in college, didn't have a name, but then I slowly developed a name and a thing, and like, what exactly do I want this to be? So it's been in the works for quite some time, and now we're celebrating our 10th episode. So that's great.
Great. And I'm glad you talked me into it, even though I did not want to do this at all. I did not want to do it. But I'm glad you talked me into it because I've got to see some wonderful movies. And the one thing that I really missed in the pandemic, and obviously after you stopped interning, was having you to talk to about movies.
Yes. Yeah.
And not being able to go to the movies was really hard for a long time too.
Yes.
So that, yeah, because they're a big part of our lives.
Exactly.
Especially yours. Look at all those movies on the shelf behind you.
Yeah. Exactly. Which you'll get to see in the podcast that comes out Wednesday. I pull out one of these VHSs and at random and read the back of it, and I'll give you a hint for people who's listening right now. It's the Matthew Broderick's Inspector Gadget.
Oh wow!
So,
oh my goodness!
Which whoever wrote the jacket to that movie deserves the biggest raise. It's insane. So be sure to listen to that. It's the way that the puns and the what they it's insane. But so that's one little bit that we do in the show. But okay, that was fun. And yes, tune in there. And then also, if you enjoy the stuff here, click like and subscribe, as they say. Click ring the notification bell.
Yeah. Give us 5 stars on iTunes.
Yes, if you're listening to this as a podcast, give us subscribe and give us 5 stars and tell your friends.
Tell your friends. Yeah. Anyone who's interested in obscure movies that you missed during the 2000s. Yeah. 2010 to 2020.
Yes. Which quite a few of them. We added last week. We added some more to the list too. So this will go on forever.
Forever and ever.
Great. Here's to 10 more episodes.
That's right. 10 more.
10 more. Great. Well, see you next week. Bye.
Bye, Cade.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Diane.